Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome back to episode 271. Running a little bit late this week because, well, I had no power and Chris was busy with a work gig, so we had to postpone. And we've got Ron with Geooh Live. He's the developer of that Android geocaching app. So, Ron, first, thanks for coming on the show, and also thank you for rescheduling with us.
Oh, no problem. It's kind of fun having these, so I appreciate you inviting me.
Well, before we get into Geooh, we do want to make a note that in just a few weeks, the March 30th show is Rock Chalk and Land Monkey talking about how caching is like a donut. So we want your thoughts on how geocaching is like a donut. And if we use yours on the show, there might be a gift from coinsandpins.com or project-gc.com. So send those into us at geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com by March 27th. Of course, your email doesn't have to be limited to how geocaching is like a donut. It might be a great donut-themed cache or maybe an event. So make sure those come to us at geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com so we can share them on the show, and you might get something cool in return. Now, Ron, first, tell us about Geooh Live, because I know it's been around for a while, but it's not one of the apps that a lot of people think of when they think of the Android geocaching apps.
Yeah, it's a app I started years ago, and it was primarily for myself. I develop apps, for a living, and I didn't like the official app, so I thought I'm going to start working on something on my own. And I built it according to how I like to cache. So I had that for 2 or 3 years, and I thought, well, let's see if I can market it. And it never got much traction initially because, first of all, I tried to put a price on it. And with the Android market, everyone expects apps to be free, and the CGO was out there, and it's got a lot of downloads. So other apps have a hard time getting any kind of traction because the search results don't even show the apps. They just keep showing the CGO app. But then a year or so ago, when Groundspeak came out with their latest official app, and everybody started having problems with that, I thought, oh, okay, it's time to really make a push on mine and upgrade it. So I started a very concentrated effort to put a lot of more features in it and make it more friendly, and then start advertising more. So that's one reason I enjoy being on this show. It gives me an opportunity to publicize that there is an alternative, and I think a better alternative out there.
And a lot of people will certainly say there's not much worse than the official app. And they're going to be on the show next week to talk about what they're doing with the official app and where it's going and how it's changed. But you did see a lot more development going into it. And like I had played with Geooh Live like way back when we talked about that earlier. And at that point, I couldn't get it to run right on whatever phone it was that I had then. Tried it on the Nexus 4, had some issues. So this was the first chance I really got to dig into it at all. And unfortunately, I haven't had a whole lot of time to go with caching because of all the issues around here lately. But the few issues that I did find, I emailed you and you were able to take care of real quick. So you are actively developing it and in this code fairly regularly.
Oh, yes. And I've got some beta testers, or I'll get feedback from some of the new geocaches who have discovered it. And they know they ask for something. So I can do iterations on that very rapidly. So I'm constantly adding new features and putting it out for others to use. So if you do look at it, not to brag, but feature-wise, I think it excels above any other geocaching app, both on Android and iOS.
Well, and you do have a list of features that you think are unique that you want to talk about. But one of the things that we had talked about was the performance. So you had come up with the option for light or full data when you do the Pocket Query downloads.
Right. Initially, when you talked about the performance, I thought you were just talking about the running of the app, but it was the downloading of offline lists. And typically, I always thought when you are in offline mode, you want full data so you can go offline. And so I would download the full data content of a geocache. But when you mentioned what speeds the others were doing, well, that was because they were downloading in a light mode. So I turned on that capability of downloading just the basic information like the other apps do. And then when you go out and cache, if you select one, then it downloads the full data at that time. So it's kind of more of an incremental download. The danger is if you are truly offline with no network access, then you can't download the additional data. So I give the user an option now, which I don't think anyone else does. When you create an offline list via a Pocket Query or a bookmark list, you can do a full download or a light download, just for speed.
Yeah, and the few that I can think of that do have that option, it's somewhere in the settings, and you'll have to go and dig through it to find that. The first one, though, on your list of features that are unique to Geooh is offline list oriented, which I'm not even sure what that means.
Well, this goes back to when I originally started geocaching and building the app. I have this method of caching where I like creating files. Here I've got a list of caches for this area I'm going to cache in, or I've got a bookmark list I want to keep updated regularly, or Pocket Queries. So I built it to where it was offline list oriented. You open the home screen and there's several files of offline lists that you have. It seems now that the official app from Groundspeak is becoming more offline oriented, and I think others are talking about doing the same thing. So the idea with Geooh is you can do a live mode like everyone else, but it excels at creating these offline lists and having multiple ones to select and to open up and to cache from.
Yeah, that does seem to be the way that everyone is going. And that kind of goes into the next thing, though, where caches in the list are grouped by various features like unfound, found, DNF, and notes.
Yes, that's, again, I don't see anyone else doing this. So when I'm out caching, I like to see the ones I haven't found and then the ones I have, or DNF. So I start grouping the caches. So once you find a cache and mark it as found, then it puts it in a found subcategory, which those groups are collapsible, so you can kind of close them to see what else is out there, and it gives you a count of them. So to me, it's a better way to manage the list of caches by grouping them according to their status.
Yeah, I do like that concept. Most of the other ones, you have to just filter if you're going to do something like that. And you can't see all the found and unfounds on the same one group like that. You have to see just the unfounds if that's what you want to see, and just your founds, that kind of thing. Right.
And the founds go at the bottom. So you always have the unfound group at the top. So anytime you open a list, you see the ones that are unfound. And you don't have to worry about the found ones because they're kind of down the list, basically.
Right. And then the next one is caches downloaded from multiple cloud sources like Drive, Dropbox, Box, OneDrive, etc. So you can take your GPX file loaded in. My question on that, and we didn't have a chance to talk about this, is what about the unpublished caches? So the caches that haven't yet been released on geocaching.com.
You mean someone's put one out?
A perfect example is we have the Belle Isle event coming up in, I think it's about 3 weeks, and they have GPX that they create with this 30 to 40 new caches. Send that out, but they don't get published until usually the end of the day. So that way the
Well,
people at the event can have access to them, but they're not on geocaching.com yet.
well, if it's in a GPX file, then yes, that's another download option. So on the home screen, there's the download button. You can select Pocket Queries, bookmark lists, or GPX files. So if they're not published, but it's in a GPX, you can load them up, and then when you're out, you can find them and set the status as found. So there's an option to upload a log and mark it as found on geocaching.com, or internally just mark it as found. So you set the status as found, and it acts like a found one, but it's not recorded online yet.
So you don't have the ability to just save it then? I thought you did have the like field note function where you could save the log as a draft.
Yes, and I've kind of done what Groundspeak is doing now. I'm calling them a draft instead of field notes.
Note. Right.
So you can mark it as the status is found, and you actually create a note when you're doing that. So that stays with that geocache. So then later, if it is published and you want to upload the log, you just create the log, and it populates the log note with the previously recorded one. So you can do it multiple ways. You can set the status, which is recorded, or you can create a draft. You can create a personal note on the server, things like that.
Well, and for anyone who doesn't know, if the cache hasn't been published, geocaching.com doesn't allow you to post anything to that cache through the API. So you would have to do that later. It's not a feature that anyone lets you do except for the offline mode. What about, though, any of the other listing services? Have you tested the GPXs off of like the open caching sites?
No, I haven't really gotten into that. I don't know if they've got much traction either. And if it's a standard GPX file and has the correct format, it should load in just fine. If it's got some kind of extensions that are open caching extensions, no, I won't see those.
Right. Yeah, the problem with some of these apps has been if they're not the GC numbers, they'll actually choke on it, which isn't very nice.
It should load up just fine. I mean, I even done this on events where I load up lab caches. And so they'll come as a GPX file, and you can load those in, and you don't really record them on Groundspeak. You just go to the web page and enter the answers to the lab cache.
Yeah, I wish we had better support in a lot of the apps for the lab caches, but that's not something that geocaching.com allows access to through the API.
No, I mean, all they do is give you the GPX file, and Geo makes it very easy to see those lab caches, and then when you solve whatever the puzzle or the requirements of the lab cache, you go to the web page for it, and Geo makes that easy to do, and then you record it, and basically that's how you log in, is through the web page.
Right. But yeah, the other thing that allows you to do is for like training caches as well. So we've talked with a number of the like scout leaders who want to do training caches and don't have a lot of good choices for apps, since the official app doesn't allow for GPX files or anything that's not their cache.
I've been at events that don't have, they'll have a GPX file of some kind of event caches for the groups to get, but they're not published.
Right.
And so you just load them up and use the app to find them.
And let's move on. Another one that you had on the list was saving caches to lists and merging those lists. So basically just list management kind of stuff.
Yes, it's the newest feature on the live map is that you can select and save those caches into any list. So if you got a predefined list, you can save those caches there, or you can create a new list while you're on the live map. As you're downloading Pocket Query or bookmark lists, you can put it in a common file. So let's say you got several bookmark lists, you can merge them together into one. So as you're downloading, you just specify this merged file you want to combine it into.
And then you also mentioned multiple filters on cache listings.
Yes, I think Geo's got the most comprehensive filtering capability. So when you open up a list of caches, you can open up a filter dial like you're showing there, and select one or more different filters, and then apply that to that list. And so when you close that, then it just shows you those geocaches that match all those filters. So it's a very powerful way to do that. Other apps, they seem to just you select one filter. Geo lets you have multiple ones to do that.
Yeah, most of the apps I've played with do allow you to have that multiple filters, so I might have to go dig into some of those Android alternatives and see if that is a big downside on some of them. Because if so,
Yeah,
that's kind of mandatory, you know.
Yeah, it seemed like the only alternative is CGO, and they've got something like that, but it's very cumbersome, and I'm not sure if they do a multiple uh, filtering or not. I'll kind of look back at it.
Yeah, I actually don't use CGO much because it does do the scraping, which makes me very nervous. But
Yeah, that's been kind of a frustration that some of the Android app developers, they were all abiding by the terms of service and using the API, while CGO was kind of doing it illegally. But CGO got the market share because they were free.
Well, they were free, and they were one of the first apps out there that didn't totally suck. So
yeah, and so all the other Android apps kind of dropped by the wayside.
Yeah, well, and Cache Sense has since died out. Neon Geos doesn't seem to have had anything happen in quite a while.
Yeah.
And realistically, you don't need your app to be updated monthly even to be a good functional app. It just has to be, supported, and make sure that stuff doesn't break with new OS versions, with changes in the API, that kind of thing.
Right. I think CGO and Geo are the only active Android apps currently.
That could be, because I haven't seen anything from Neon Geo, as I mentioned, in a while, and CGO is constantly updating because they're scraping and they have to change every time there's an update to the website.
Right. And I think Geo just looks better than CGO. It follows all of Google's material design concepts and how you're supposed to present the screens. I think it looks nicer.
Let's continue on the list, because there is a long list and not unlimited time here. We have lists and maps show previous DNF logs icons.
Yeah, so when you open up a map, it will tell, even on a list, Geo can tell you if the last log was a DNF and put a DNF overlay on top of the icon. So you can quickly look at a map or list and know which caches have had a last log of a DNF. And I did this because, personally, I just got frustrated going to a cache and then finally looking at the logs and realizing, oh, that was a DNF the last time. So this makes it very easy for me to look at a map or list and know potentially that might be a cache to avoid. I try to do the same thing, that if there are no previous logs found, that's a potential first to find. So I mark them as first to find or DNF. So you may want to go after it to try to get a first to find.
Cool. I like that, and this number of people I know probably will be very happy to hear that. You can actually see those DNF or those FTF opportunities in there.
Yes.
You also mentioned that you have HTML and Markdown available in the cache descriptions.
Yeah. So when you look at a cache description, it is rendered in the full glory that the owner intended it to be. So if they've got HTML and graphics and other highlights inside the description, it will show the way that it does on the website. And if it's even got links in there, you can click on a link and open up a browser with that link. So again, it's just a much prettier and more valuable description by having that.
Yeah, and certainly a big one for the puzzle cachers, because that's where a lot of that information is hidden.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, you also talked about the offline logging with the log templates, and that is a huge thing for the power user. So can you go into the log templates?
In settings, you can create a log header and a log footer. And basically that is that whenever you create a new log for a cache, it will populate the top or bottom of that log with the header or footer. So a lot of times if I'm out caching in an area, I may kind of say what I'm there for. And so I'll put that in the header or footer. And then when I'm trying to log it, it's pre-populated, so I don't have to keep rewriting the same thing over and over again.
And what about any variables? Do you have support for like the number of finds in the day kind of stuff?
Not yet, no. That's kind of on my to-do list, but so far I haven't done that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that spoiled me about Geosphere was being able to have a few different log types and just pick, oh yeah, this was a DNF, this was with my buddies, this was with biking, so I loved having that. But you also mentioned that offline logging. So do you have the option to save the logs offline and send them up in a batch, or is it a one-by-one draft kind of mode?
Both. So when you create a log, if the network isn't available to send it to the Groundspeak, the app will ask you, do you want to save it for later? And you say yes, and then saves it in a queue. If you create a log, you can also force it to go in the queue, even though there may be a network connection. So once you've got logs put in this queue, there's a little icon that shows up on the app that says there's a cloud. You're ready to send some up to the Groundspeak. Then you open that up, and you'll see all the logs that you've queued up offline, and there's checkboxes next to them, so you can check one or more and send them in in a batch grouping. So as they complete, you get a little notification. It worked, and then you go on. Then they're removed from the queue. And it also has a feature that if you're offline, off the network, no cell connection, when the cell connection comes back online, Geoh prompts you, okay, you're back online. Would you like to submit your logs now? So it's a little bit nice reminder that you can do it now.
And the next one was talking about entering waypoints.
Yeah, so you can enter a waypoint separately into an offline list or just in a list by itself. Just like if you create your own waypoint in a list, or for a cache, you can add in waypoints for that cache. And I've spent a lot of work recently to beef up the corrected coordinates capability of a cache. So if you're doing a multi and you solved it, and you create a waypoint for it, either through the app or on the website as a corrected coordinate, then the cache changes. The icon will change it with a CC standing for a corrected coordinate overlay on it, so you can see that this cache has been corrected, and it puts that cache coordinate in the new location. Plus, it creates another little waypoint for the original location. So if you correct it, you can see where it originally was at, and you can see where it's been corrected, and you told to where you solved it at.
Yeah, that can be really handy. Another thing that's going to be handy for some of the challenge seekers is the county boundaries and names that you've built into the maps.
Yes, this is something that only Geoh does. It has, and it's for the United States only, but it will overlay county boundaries. It will put the county name on the county, and you can shade them. So if you find a cache in a county, it will shade it for you automatically, or you can force it to be shaded yourself if you haven't found it with Geooh. You can also long press on anywhere on the map, and it will tell you what that location, if it's a city, the county, the coordinates, elevation. So there's been puzzle or challenge caches that at times I needed to know what the elevation was for that location. So Geooh, again, I think it's the only one that gives you that information very easily. So if you look at a map, you long press it, it will tell you what county that is. So if you don't have the county boundary showing, you can still long press on the map and know what county you're in, or where you're going to.
Yeah, I certainly don't know of any others doing quite that much information. So that's going to be a nice one to have. And you can probably use that to kind of figure out new cache locations as well, for hiding a new cache.
Correct. And I've got the feature like others do. You can display the radius around a cache, so you can look at it on a map and know if you're too close to another cache when you're placing one.
Well, and another thing that you mentioned that's kind of cool, if I understand this correctly, is inside Geooh, it will display a route to the cache on the map with the estimate and distance.
Yeah, so on the map, whenever you select a cache, at the very top of the map, there's a little box that is a button, actually. It will tell you the distance to that location. There's two little buttons on the sides of that one that can center on the cache location or center on your location. But that center button shows you the distance to it. If you press on it, it will show you visibly the route to that cache from your location. So the kind of the nice thing, that image is not showing that. There'll be a blue line that will show there you go. That blue line is what Google says should be the way to go to that location. And it tells you the ETA. So on this example, it's got 36 minutes to get there. And Geooh has the also unique feature that you can select multiple caches and have it optimize the route to go to each one of them. So if you've got a collection of them, you first of all you long press on that distance button and it brings up a dialog. You select the caches you want to optimize a route to, then it will show you that in another blue line. It's kind of a neat feature that if you want to know the quickest way to get to all these caches, have Google tell you that.
Well, and I like that idea of the multiples, especially because I've gone on so many of these trips where it's like, I want to hit all of these caches. What's the best way for me to do it? And having that right in the same app certainly would save me a lot of the time of switching back and forth.
Exactly. And again, that's something that I have not seen anywhere else.
Then you also have a slide out drawer on the map for cache selection.
Correct. So on the map, there's a little button on the lower left, and you touch it, and a little drawer slides out, and it will have all of the caches on the map. So you can select a cache from the list, and it will center on it on the map. So it's kind of a nice way that you got a collection of map markers. Well, there's a cache out there with a certain name. You can go to the list, and it's sorted by name. You can select the name, and it will center on it. So it's a very nice, very quick way to locate caches on the map by a list, kind of side-by-side list and map together.
And then Google Street View right in the map as well.
Yes, so there's a button at the bottom of the map. So you've got a cache selected. You hit the Street View button, and it will display Google Street View of that location, which I found valuable at times to, okay, I'm going to go someplace. I want to make sure there's a parking area, and looks like it's a good location to even travel to. So it's kind of neat. It's just, you can visually see what it's going to look like before you go there.
See, and I thought that was just so you could figure out which lamppost it was in when you got there.
Well, you could too. You could look around and see if there is a lamppost or see something that looks like a hiding place.
Or that nice big thing that's sitting in the parking lot that says geocache. Yeah, like it works that way.
If it would be lucky, yeah.
And then you also have a pretty unique hotspot view in Geooh.
Yeah, this is kind of more of a neat thing. How often someone uses it, I don't know. But if you have a high density area, like in a big metropolitan city, and if you're just looking at icons on a map, you may not know where the most of them are at. So you can turn on hotspot view, and it gives this heat map of all the caches in those areas. So like in this location, you see the majority of them are in like it's a conservation area in down the green box. So that it's just kind of a neat way to kind of tell you beforehand where you might want to go to get your most caches.
Yeah, and most of the apps that do something like that, they're just doing the clustering, so you don't have that massive icons, but it doesn't give you the information like that heat map does. So I do like that as a way to tell where you should hit for your target caching.
Yeah, it's a nice summary, and good you mentioned the clustering. I had clustering a long time ago, even before the official app from Groundspeak implemented it. And I find it valuable because sometimes I don't like the map getting too cluttered, so you can cluster them. In settings, you can select what the cluster number is. So you want them to cluster every 10 caches together, or every 20 or 50, or you can turn clustering off. I've heard some people complain about the official app. There's no option to turn it off. They don't like clustering. Well, Geooh gives you the option of either way.
Yeah. Yeah, and clustering is great for quick, runarounds and figure out where you're going and where the caches might be to look for. But I like this heat map because it gives you, okay, there's a nice trail of them, for example, that's going along this road. This is what I want to hit then.
Correct. Again, when you're if you have all these map markers, icons, it's hard to tell which ones are the high density because they may be laying on top of each other or not. You don't know.
Right, exactly. And you don't know if they're all inside a park that might not be open when you're going through.
All right. And kind of a side note, even on the icons, I'm using the Groundspeak's official or the new round icons. So on the map, you can very quickly tell what type of cache it is because it's matching what you see on the website. I'm kind of surprised that the Groundspeak app does not do that itself. They just put some tiny little icons on the map, and Geooh will give you a bigger icon, and it's a very visible what type of cache it is.
Now, I didn't have a chance to look for this, but are there options in Geooh for like smaller icons if you want to block less of the screen?
No, and actually that's a good request. That might be something I put. What I've done is tried to optimize the icon size, because once you start shrinking it, you start losing the detail on the image. So I could shrink them a little further, but then they may not become very visible to see.
Yeah, maybe just the color dots, just little tiny little circles so that you know where it is, but you can still see what's around it.
Right. Yeah. I may look into that.
Yeah. Totally aside, that's one of the things that I hated on Geosphere at first, is it used pins with the colored heads. Then I quickly got to love that because it meant only like the 3 pixels at the very base blocked what you were actually seeing.
Where it was at, yeah.
Yeah, so you knew right where it was at, and then the pin that told you what it was at was way up at the top. So I learned to love it, even though I hated that at first. And then one of the things that's also pretty unique to Android apps is you're actually supporting multiple turn-by-turn navigation apps outside of the Google Maps that everyone seems to support.
Right. And that's a recent thing I implemented. So if you've got a preference for something like Waze, you can, in settings, select I want to use Waze as my navigation app. And actually, Geooh years ago was the very first geocaching app that did turn-by-turn navigation. I had Google navigation built in it long before anyone else did. And now I'm giving everyone the option of using alternative navigation apps.
Yeah, and these cachers who are really into Waze, and not just the cachers, that would rather use Waze for everything navigation. And I can't say that I blame them, because once you get used to a particular turn-by-turn app, that is all you ever want to use.
Yeah, and I'd say that's when some started requesting that feature. I was just always using Google navigation. I never was a big fan of Waze, so I didn't think it was important, but I was told otherwise.
Yeah. No, I'm not a big fan of Waze either, but I tend to use Navigon, which I'm not sure if it's supported or not, but it doesn't seem like it's even supported by Garmin so much anymore.
Yeah, and another feature with the map also is that I've got it themed. So I've got it kind of styled in terms of colors and the highway color patterns and state boundaries, things like that, to try to match what the Groundspeak geocaching.com map looks like. So when you look at the map online on a browser, it kind of matches what Geooh does with its map rendering.
Yeah, this can be really handy, especially for those users going to the website frequently. But you also have integration with Project GC.
Yeah, so Geooh has a very extensive profile information. So you can open up your profile and see all these characteristics, your finds, hides, trackables, favorites, souvenirs, and also you can open up your Project GC on the Project GC website. So just get another way to see more information about your stats. You can also open up another user's profile, so you can see information about their hides and finds and favorites and things that just kind of discover about them.
And we are definitely fans of Project GC around here, so that can be handy for a bunch of stuff. Once you're on that, I assume you can do all of the links and everything, so you can do your challenge checkers and stuff right from there.
Oh, correct. Yeah, it just opened up a mini browser window, and so whatever the website can do, the app is doing it. I'm also doing something similar like that. I think I'm the only app that does the messages on Groundspeak. So from a user's profile or from their avatar, when you're looking at it at a cache, you can open up the message center and send them a message or see all the messages you have sent to other geocaches. The only thing it lacks is the Groundspeak app will do a notification if you've received a message. But Groundspeak doesn't let third-party apps have access to that feature via the API. But I took the next best, where I can open up a browser, mini browser window, and show the message center there and enter messages. So if you're doing a virtual and you want to send the answers to the owner, you can open up the message center from the app and send them a message.
Yeah, which is something that I like being able to do, and I'm kind of frustrated that Groundspeak doesn't let other apps do that. And we've talked with some of the other developers, and because of the API rules and like iOS, you're not allowed to do the browser windows like that anymore. So it's
Yeah.
kind
So
of up a creek for the
yeah, so
iOS
apparently
guys.
the benefit of being on Android then is I can open up a browser window and it looks just like part of the app, but it's it's not bypassing any security. It's doing what the if you had to open up a browser separately.
Right, exactly. And then you also had show cache finds for the day with the type and breakdown, and if you have a duplicate log, which is really handy.
Yeah, there so many times I'm out caching with some buddies, and well, how many did we find for the day? Well, no one could answer that, and you should go back and go to the website and count them. Well, so I've got Geooh that on the home screen, you touch the top bar that has your Geooh name in it. It will update your stats and then show you how many caches you have found for the day, and a breakdown by the cache type. So you can see how many were traditionals, maybe how many were multis. And then it also lets you know if you've logged multiple, created multiple logs for that cache. Except there was so many times by accident I would create a duplicate log and not even know that. Well, Geooh will tell you you've got a multiple log or duplicate log. Then it can even create you an offline file with those the caches that have the duplicate logs, so you can go back and correct them. Unfortunately, Groundspeak doesn't let you delete logs from apps via the API, or I'd make it much easier to do it that way.
Right, right. Yeah, and early on with the original geocaching app, I did have situations where like communication errors would generate like 3 and 4 logs. So that would have
Yeah,
been handy
right,
way back then.
right, right. So yeah, it happens still in an app. I'm getting network problems, and Groundspeak will say I didn't submit the app or the log, and I'll do it again. Then later I found out no, it took it. It gave me an error even though it did take it.
Right. Yeah. We've seen that a couple of times at least.
Yeah.
But I think we probably buried what to some people is going to be the lead, and that is the trackable scanner that's built into Geooh.
Yes, I had this. Someone else requested this from me that they saw something on the iPhone, an app that does that, a standalone app. Well, I built a scanner inside Geooh, so if you've got a trackable, you can pop up on a scanner window like that, and it will scan and look for 6 letters only that are capitalized to find the trackable number. And then if it finds it, it marks it as detected, and then you can see the information about it and then create a log from it. So it's really good if the trackable has a very readable number. It scans it quickly. If there's not enough contrast or the lighting's bad or something, and maybe have difficulty scanning it, but then you have the option of manually entering it. And the good thing about the scanner is that you can zoom in with that camera. So if you are a little bit like me and have a hard time reading tiny numbers, you can have the scanner zoom into it and very easily read that trackable number and enter it manually if you had to.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a very popular feature for many of the users because we keep getting that question of what's the equivalent to TV scan for Android?
Well, this is the only Android version I've found, and it's fully integrated. Unlike the one on iPhone, it's a separate app, and then you still have to deal with it separately. But while you're in Geooh, you can slide a drawer open and do a TB scan. And I found out I never liked trackables before, but since I put the scanner in, I thought, oh, I'm this is easier than I thought it would be. So I've started using the scanner more often, or logging trackables more often.
Yeah, well, and we find at the events lately, people are pulling up the TB scan on iOS, and they are passing around the list to everyone who doesn't have it, so they can do the bulk
Oh,
capture
yeah.
with like Project GC or whatever tool they want to use.
Yeah.
But it is like a totally different world, but it's only at the events that I ever see that being used.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and telling us about Geooh Live. And of course, we'll have the links in the show notes, but tell people where they can find it if they don't want to head over to the show notes.
Well, it's on Google Play. So just go to Google Play, search for Geooh Live. That's Geooh Live. And the Play Store should show it. And then from there, you can download it.
All right. Thanks again. And we do have a whole bunch of great shows coming up. Next week, we are talking, as I mentioned before, with both Ben and Rock Chalk about the geocaching app. That's going to be interesting. Both of them in the same room. Are they going to play nice? Don't know. And then we've got another randomized show, followed by that Caching is Like a Donut. So remember to get your Caching is Like a Donut stories into us at GeoGearHeads at CacheManiacs.com for that one. And then on April 6th, we're going to be talking again about pocket queries. So if you have any questions or comments on any of those things, make sure to email us at GeoGearHeads at CacheManiacs.com so we can talk about that and include that on the shows. Check the CacheManiacs website at CacheManiacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing GeoGearHeads at CacheManiacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the CacheManiacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the CacheManiacs shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Offenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2017 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cache with a CacheManiac.